Hey folks, so I built this planter which wheels around, and it has basically two of these containers to be used as the pot. So the one on top will basically store the plants, and as you can see, like here, I have holes in it which will be drainage holes, and then I have this one without any holes, which will be the water reservoir. Now I consider drilling holes near the top so that any excess water can drain out, but because I'm putting carnivorous plants and they like it nice and moist, I figure what I'm going to do is let it just drain out the top here. And one cool thing about this planter is it recesses in there, so there's hardly any plastic coming up the top. And I also made this to where you can pull this out. Now it's a little tight because I varnished it, and if it after the varnish cures, if it's still a little tight, I may just put a little soap, and that will act as a good lubricant for wood. So it will lubricate it and make it work well. So when you look at the two containers, they have this little thing to act as a spacer, but for the other one, the lower one, I used a knife and cut these off, and that helps it recess further into the planter itself. Now, when you look at the planter, this is how the top portion looks, and I used screws. I tried using nails, and this was a nightmare to make because I was trying to cut the wood and varnish them and then assemble it, but I wasn't cutting everything to the right size because I had to base everything on the size and dimensions of these. So that's one thing to consider. And to actually get this whole thing to the right width and everything, I had to basically use this bracket. Like, I had to start by this square thing here and then work from there, because just trying to size it out wasn't very effective. Now I like how this thing, it's actually fitting in better than it used to earlier today because as the paint is curing, or the varnish. But let me show you the underside. So right here I built like a rack to put the wheels in. I did the little varnishing today, so that could be a little wet. Nope. Anyway, these are the wheels, and you want to get casters where all four of these turn. And I accidentally had varnish in one of these and it was sluggish, but I put a little bit of a silica-based WD-40 as the regular instead of the regular kind, and it worked great. So this is how I set up the inside. Now naturally, you know, everybody's going to be using a different container, so they're going to use, you know, have a different style in the way they built it. Now one thing to note is the segment where I trimmed this portion as opposed to left that spacer is going inside here so that it can be further recessed. So that's how it is. So now let's set it up with plants. So I had this green pot with a bunch of carnivorous plants. I had some Drosera binata, Venus flytrap, Sarracenia purpurea, a Dixie lace pitcher plant, and that other one that's still alive. And they survived a couple winters, but then this past winter, for some reason, they died. And usually in the wintertime, you want to make sure the pot doesn't dry out completely, but also in the summer, being a smaller pot, it was hard to keep it moist. You know, I had some holes on the backside as drainage so that it doesn't get oversaturated, but I eventually did tape them up because a pot of this size, you know, I wanted to keep all the water I could in there. Anyway, it didn't do too well, and I still have one that's surviving, and I went ahead and bought a Venus flytrap of the Ake Ryu variety, assuming that I pronounced that cultivar correctly. And those are what I'm going to plant in the planter for the time being until I find other varieties of Sarracenias and some Droseras that I want to get for there, and maybe even some butterworts. Okay, so here's what I did. I had a little bit of the dry sphagnum moss. So I put that on top because it acts as a great sponge. Then I put some sphagnum peat moss all around, so I need to get some more of the regular sphagnum moss. And I separated the pitcher plant into multiple plantlets, so as they grow and everything, I can divide some more. I really want the moss to go up to the rim, but I need to put some more. But also, as I buy more carnivorous plants to fill up this void over here, it will add volume, so I'm okay with it being a little low at the moment. And I separated the Venus flytrap, so I have one here and one over there. And there's one more feature I want to show that is really cool about this planter. So let me go ahead and demonstrate it to you. Okay, so this planter, now I watered it using distilled water, but I don't know exactly how full it is in the basin. And also you want to know if it's dry or if it rained a lot and how filled up the basin came. So what you can do is pull this out. And yeah, I will have to lubricate this so it doesn't stick, but it's also heavy. So you can see how full it is. So that's one nice feature about this. And the fact that I used spar varnish will let me put this outside in the elements, and the wood should be fine for several years. So this is how I built my carnivorous planter, and hopefully they will thrive in here and give me years of enjoyment.